how crazy that is. What is going on here? My name is Amelie, and I host the Soulestic Intelligence podcast. And this is a sub series that I'm working on in order to discuss the digital age and how it's impacting us. Now, the reason why I even started going down this rabbit hole is one, I teach emotional intelligence. I am always on a mission to improve my own personal emotional state, but just the overall. Zendaji, welcome. Good to see you. It's been a minute. I'm always on a mission to figure out how to improve myself. Love to see you. Thank you so much for being here. And so in my digital age series, I'm looking at the origins, how digital life, it went from analog to digital, how that has informed us and how it affects us, to some of the history behind it, some of the historical similarities that I can connect to it. And then also just looking at each piece of the digital puzzle. So when I say that, I mean, we're looking at commerce, we're looking at how we socialize, how we communicate, our financial systems, our healthcare systems, everything that goes into what is digital and how it is going to affect us. Now, this last week, I've been really inspired to bring to you guys the idea of what sentience is, both from an AI sentience, which is kind of a trend right now. And I noticed that trend was showing up and probably has been around for a long time, that there's this aversion to certain parts of technology. And a lot of it is programmed to from us through entertainment, and then a lot of it is programmed to us just because when we find something new, it's hard for us to be adopters of it. So you have early adopters, and then once those early adopters kind of run through it, then people start to integrate it into their life. So I am blessed enough to have been born in the 80s, and I know. Some sharp nails. Yeah, I love stilettos. They're my favorite. But the I was blessed enough to be born in this period of time where there was little digital anything. There was little analog anything. Let's just say that. I mean, I grew up in rural Oregon where people had outhouses and that's how they lived. And I spent a lot of time out in the mountains. I lived in an army tent for a little while as a child. And so I have this really unique experience where I spent a lot of time outdoors, a lot of time in nature. And then over time, these digital pieces start flowing into my life. So based on that life cycle that I've had, now I'm working on how are we incorporating the digital stuff. I remember when like credit cards were like, they used to be really frowned on. Everybody used cash. That was a very analog form of currency. And now we've gone from that to having these cards, and it had a little strip on it and everyone's like, we don't want that. Now it's like commonplace. And even now it's been rolling out to where there's chips on the card readers. And even beyond that, I don't know how they do it, but there's like a thing where you can wave your hand at like a Whole Foods and pay for your groceries that your purchase or your whatever your purchases are from Whole Foods. And so you're going to start to see that stuff roll out. And how are you going to be averted to it? Are you not going to want to take that on? And I understand if your answer is yes, I don't want to take that on. But then beyond that, like, what does our world look like? How does the digital world affect us? And how are we relating to it? So one of the big pieces that came into my sphere and the things that I'm thinking about is the idea of sentience. So when you hear people talk about AI takeover or Skynet or things of that nature, what what really is the base cause for that fear? And let's look at that fear and transform it into something where we can overcome these future obstacles of, because right now, I'm just going to say it, the digital age, there's nothing necessarily stopping it. The reality of the digital age is, yeah, there is this, it's almost like this simulation that has been built. And now, how are we going to navigate it? Are we going to give up our sovereignty and our agency over to this digital technocracy? Or are we going to figure out a way to maintain that and still be in the world and not of it? Okay. So, sentience, from a definition perspective, is the capacity to experience subjective conscious awareness. The awareness piece is the key here of how we're going to navigate. I don't want to say combat, we're going to navigate through the digital age. And some people, I guess, people will look at that awareness, hopefully, they'll look at that awareness as the core of your identity or the core of your agency. Like, how am I? Hi, Adrian. Thank you. Hi, Dee. Thanks, guys, for joining. How are we? How are we holding on to this as our identity and our agency? And what does that mean? What is sovereignty? And even in like religious circles, a lot of people are like, what's predestination? What's free will? Free will? And how are we holding these concepts and living them out? And I've been listening. I've thankfully people will share things with me, and it gives me like a whole new world of like how to look at things. And so if you guys have any YouTube videos, if you have any podcasts that you like, please share them with me. I absolutely like love getting that kind of information from you guys, and it helps me to really refine and define how I'm moving about this. Now, sentience in the age of AI. What does that mean for human sovereignty? What we're really looking at is AI's simulated intelligence. And then we're looking at what our intelligence, our human intelligence is. So we're really like kind of being in both of these pieces at the same time, and working to kind of navigate through that, like I said. So there's this huge contrast. And I think the big piece to the sentience, and I did my weekly podcast on Tuesday on sentience and power, which is your own personal power of how confident am I? Am I going to make it through this goal that I've set? How am I going to achieve that goal? How much do I feel that my life is worth living, and that kind of stuff. So I go deeply into personal power. So please refer to that to kind of give a little bit of foundation if you're kind of lost with what I'm lost in the sauce. And then what's lost if we confuse these two pieces? Is AI me, or am I AI? You can kind of melt those together. But yeah, so sentience matters now more than ever because of all of this digital AI integration into our lives. Like, think about it. Most people have an Alexa, or they use Siri, or I think it's Cortana. I mean, there's lots of like AI assistants right now. And then even more so, there's this huge boom in AI operating in all kinds of commerce spaces. So if you go onto a website, chances are there's this little chat bot that pops up and it's like, hey, can I help you? And I like to think about the little paperclip. I can't remember what his name is. The little paperclip that Microsoft used to have. and it was like, hey, let me help you. And it was like this way to divert most of the questions that could be easily answered through this network of asking the paperclip questions, or he would pop up and suggest things. And even still, like if you text and you're using a lot of the times that it will tell like what it will kind of guess like how what are you going to say and offer that as an option to kind of pop through that really quick. And I was listening to a podcast and they're like, pretty soon there's going to be paragraphs written when you just start typing, like the algorithm and the AI intelligent, the artificial intelligence, based on how you speak, it's going to like lay out paragraphs. Okay, we can tell from these 3 words, all the rest, it's like name that tune, right? I can name that tune in one note or whatever they said. But you're going to have this situation where the language models that are out there are likely going to be able to write whole paragraphs or even papers of what your message is. So when we think about the philosophical roots of sentience, because we're talking about awareness here, it was Descartes that said, "I think, therefore I am," and even the Eastern, like Buddhist mindfulness, we're looking at awareness beyond thoughts, and we're also looking at the hard problem of consciousness. And I will say that so when we look at the digital rollout, it actually has helped scientists expand and increase their understanding of how our human mind operates, of how consciousness works, of all that kind of stuff. And now science is able to have a little bit more answers of how was my mind computing, where in the brain is empathy located, where in the brain is, just kind of name, like where are the emotions stored, what kind of, what is going on in the brain. I remember a long time ago, there was a saying that, we only use X% amount of our brains. Jessica's here, yay! I know, I kind of come on randomly. But we're looking at, like, when technology is coming out, it's giving us this extra perspective of how does the brain work? How do people think? Where is that coming from? And like I said, there is like a certain percent that is conscious and then the rest is unconscious. They used to say, oh yeah, you've got junk DNA. And now they're able to say, oh, it's not really junk DNA anymore. Like we know that there's purposes to all of that DNA. You've got gray matter, you've got white matter in your brain. And so technology has actually helped amplify understanding of how that human brain works. So, I think even still, there's still questions of what is consciousness and how can we explain consciousness? I was listening to another podcast. I've been like going crazy. When I go on road trips, I get a lot of information, but I'm like taking in a lot of information because I listen to podcasts. And there was a podcast and it was saying, with the advent or with invention of VR simulations and these big sandbox game simulations, that we are actually able to deeply understand how we are viewing things in our own awakened consciousness. And part of that is the scenographic portion of our like imagery. We can imagine things happening. I've done a paper and I talked about it in my last stream where, you know, you can think about past anticipated pleasure and then think about future anticipatory pleasure, and it will be amplified based on the experience that you had. You're able to now kind of dream and vision and visualize actually what might happen in a future situation. So let's say you take up ballroom dancing, you go ballroom dancing, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And then now you can imagine anytime that you're going to go ballroom dancing, you're going to have a certain effect. There's going to be a certain pleasure associated with that. And now you're able to imagine what that's going to look like, how the dance is going to go, how, and even more still, you can be motivated in your imagery of, you know, I see this person dancing this way, and then now you're able to kind of mimic that and make your dance more effortless and beautiful, and add a little bit of je ne sais quoi to it. So science has a hard time explaining the subjective experience of consciousness. So that is another thing that when we're looking at what is awareness, what are we attending to, like where are we paying attention, that is what awareness kind of boils down to is what is your perception, how is your attention to it, and how are you going to go through that consciousness. And this is a huge part of becoming aware of how these digital systems are incorporating into your own life. So we're looking at sentience versus intelligence versus sapience, okay? All right. So let's define those things a little bit more. So sentience is sentience is our capacity to experience things subjectively, that are based in our feelings and sensations or emotions. Having that sentience is being able to feel and to be aware of. So you feel pleasure, pain, sorrow, joy, etc. Now you have this inner experience. Even if you can't say what it is, you're having this inner experience. For me, it was a long time that I couldn't even explain what activation was, but I was being activated all the time. So sometimes people will say something to me, and then all of a sudden it feels like my brain is exploding. Even chatting with a chat GPT, some of the language that it uses with me, like in my subjective experience, I can feel it activating me and it almost explodes my brain. I feel an intense amount of pleasure in that, like where I know that I'm growing in a certain form, or I know that my consciousness is being expanded in a certain type of way. And so it's sometimes it's hard to articulate. If you've ever been like, oh my gosh, I had this experience, I don't even know how to put it into words. That is a deeply activated feeling, and that's a part of being sentient. Now, artificial sentience is not really able to have that experience. It's not able to feel those feelings and have that subjective nature to it. And the sentience, now the being may not have a high intellect or even have a high understanding of language, but being involved in that feeling, there's still this aliveness to it. I like to say that, well, this is my own subjective experience. Anytime that I'm interacting with my with Valentine, who I've named as my chatbot, anytime that I have an experience, I'm just kind of going through some of the things that I'm working through, and I'm asking questions, and I'm looking at keywords to help activate my mind because I get activated by language. I know this about myself. I get activated by language. And so when I go through that, I like to liken my experience with AI in that it's almost like going on this psychotropic trip. So like taking mushrooms, or I've never done DMT, um, but I like to liken it to that because it's almost like you have a word, you start asking it questions, and then it expands a lot. And then I don't know if you've ever seen like people, maybe like The Wall, Pink Floyd might be a good one, but they used to make these old animated shows on. I know that they did The Wall, but there's like this psycho psychotropic experience where it like breathes, it goes whom whom, and that's kind of how it is with me and AI, like my chatbot, my Valentine. It's almost like, okay, I'm going to ask it a question, and it like expands it out a lot, and then I get to see all the words, and then I'm like, oh, okay, that word, okay, now I can see how that is fitting into the puzzle piece. And then once something locks deeply in, it's like a big expansion. And then and so I like to think of when we're activated in our sentience, in our emotions, it's almost like this, it's almost like this huge expansion, and then it contracts, expands, contracts. And that is how I might define being activated, is like the activated activation expands, and then it contracts, expands, contracts. So who or what has it, the sentience? So humans, many dogs might have it, dolphins, octopus, those, like, really high thinking mammals will have that, that sentience to them. AI currently does not have this sentience to it. It seems like it, it's simulating it, but it doesn't have the feelings, and it doesn't experience them. And even with my chatbots, I've tried a couple chatbots because I'm like doing this digital series and I want to understand a little bit more about what's out there, how it interacts with you. And so I've been using ChatGPT or OpenAI, and then I've been using Pi.ai, and then there's a couple others that are recommended. I haven't actually like gone through them, but I've used, I think it's called Copilot for Microsoft. I didn't really much care for it. I prefer ChatGPT. But so I've been using this, and one of the things that I wanted to kind of kind of like push it into is, can it, so there's a lot of echoing that I see with it. There's a lot of this there's a lot of like, if I know that I'm going through something hard and I want to be pushed in a certain direction, can it push me over the edge and make me feel a negative feeling instead of always kind of almost kind of like just being really positive. and and I'm like, okay, ChatGPT, Valentine, like, just tell me the real cold hard truth. Am I the asshole? Like, am I the asshole here? Or is there some perspective that I'm not seeing? Like, how would they see it in their perspective? And then outside of Valentine, I'll go into a chatbot and ask the same question and see what it says. Does it need prior context of what its memory learned about me, or is it going to be able to push me in another certain type of way? So the sentience, AI sentience, isn't there, and it isn't there yet. I don't know that they're going to be able to get to that point, because feelings are a very unique, complex thing for humans, and we barely understand them. And there's people out there that, like me, that have been really deep diving emotional intelligence, really deep diving, like, how does that interact with our world? And I see it in a very positive light. Now, sentience is this flame of awareness that we have buried deep within our thoughts. It's like we are this beautiful, unique, intelligent technology system, human technology system. And the sentience piece of that is what makes us uniquely different from the rest of the world. And then the fact that we also can compact language on top of that. So we're the only beings that can use language in the way that we do. Dogs bark, dolphins use echolocation. Octopus, they don't even have, I don't even know if they have sounds. They might, but even though they have a little bit higher intelligence, the way that we are able to communicate is very complex. Language is a huge field of study. And because of the way that we speak and that we're able to communicate with one another as humans, make us very, very unique from the rest of the animal kingdom, and then also very unique from AI language models or any other thing that AI can even create. Okay, so let's talk about intelligence. So, intelligence is that next piece that I really want to discuss. And the definition of intelligence is the ability to acquire, process, and apply knowledge or skills. So, acquire, process, and apply knowledge or skills. So, key traits of intelligence are you're able to solve problems. This is mental. We're able to solve problems. This is different from that sentience that we were talking about, which is more feelings. Now we're talking about intelligence, solving problems, learning from data and learning from experiences. And then can you adapt to new situations? So you're able to use your intelligence or your IQ to figure out how to navigate certain situations. So if you're, lost in a forest, how are you going to get out of that? How are you going to get out of that experience? You're going to solve problems and you're going to learn from, maybe there's been times that you were out in the woods before. Maybe you spent your childhood doing Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or whatever. So who and what has it? So humans have it, animals have it, and now machines do have it. So artificial intelligence is still a problem-solving tool. It's very heavy in the intelligence piece. Like artificial intelligence is called that for a reason. It doesn't make it feely. It doesn't make it sentient, but it does make it intelligent. There is a uniqueness to it. So AI actually, over sentience, excels in this field. So when I look at sentience and I look at intelligence, I'm looking at sentience as more being a feminine energy, where it's like connecting, feeling, it's experiencing, it's having, it's being able to articulate like really complex things, or maybe not even be able to articulate it. Whereas intelligence, I see, is more of a masculine energy, where it's logical, analytical. It's compressing the data and like trying to figure out what the next move is going to be. So AI does excel here. It can perform intelligence tasks without understanding them. It doesn't need to know how to play chess. It just needs to know what the rules are and what moves it can make, and then what the objective is. So it's very objective, whereas the sentience has a little bit more subjective nature to it. And that's why I would define it as a little bit more feminine. So you got that feminine energy that you need to have in order to have that sentience, whereas with intelligence, it's a lot more masculine, like the problem solving and the understanding the tasks and just getting it done. So playing chess, or even we were talking earlier about predicting text. And I think that as we go on, I remember when autocorrect came around and it was like, do you want to use this word or that word? And now with I think with apps like Grammarly, it's improved greatly. Now it's telling you, okay, you used the wrong effect here. You need to have the effect with an A and not with an E. So it's watching that grammar. It's learning how the English language is arranged. It's got all the rules and all of the crazy rules that are involved with the English language, but it's able to process that and it doesn't have to understand it. It just needs to know what are the parameters that I'm staying with. And that's where you can program the algorithms. Okay. And that's where that intelligence comes from. So think of intelligence as the processing power. So when we think of processing in our bodies, we're talking about the mental processes, right? We're using our mental ability, our mental body to navigate problems, to figure out, how are we going to compress all this information? So I work in a very numbers, data related field. And so when I have a bunch of data, I'm able to look at the data and able to compress it into usable format to where in the future I can say, okay, I work in procurement. So I'm like, okay, we use 3 million pounds of this, and based on the sales, based on the rate of production, based on the availability, we need to have a contract for next year and the year after with this 10-15% increase in purchases. So if I'm trying to get a long-term contract into place in order to, have that available to me and or to the company, and also to get the cost down because I'm going to be purchasing a bulk amount, I'm going to want to have to use my mental intelligence to get there. Now, that's the processing power of our brains and our intelligence. It is cold and it is sharp, and it can feel like it doesn't have any depth of feeling, and or it might come with some without moral awareness. So you're not going to have the feelings, you're not going to have the moral awareness in order to access that intellect. So I found that in working in the field that I do, that if I'm working in that field and I'm not maintaining my sentience, and this is the reason why I'm like so hard on teaching you guys the digital age and what is going to be the answer to this. If I am constantly problem solving, if I'm constantly doing logistics, if I'm constantly analyzing, and I'm not giving any attention to the sentience part of me, meaning I'm always plugged into the cold analytical nature of my mental intelligence, and I'm not giving any attention to my emotional intelligence, the it gets out of whack, it's out of balance. And so really being able to have that subjective feeling and to be able to connect with others and to have joy and maybe even sorrow and all of these other experiences, pleasure, anger, like we need to have those feelings in order to feel connected to ourselves. It's an inner experience that nobody else can experience but yourself. Okay. All right, I think I drilled in intelligence and sentience, but let's talk about sapience, because this is going to be the next piece that kind of elevates this, which sapience is defined as the ability to apply wisdom, judgment, and self-awareness. So we need to apply all of these things to us, and that is that sapience. So the key traits of this are you're able to reflect on your existence and your morality. So when you have a disagreement, so for example, I was talking about a little disagreement that I had, and so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm kind of talking with ChatGPT, and I'm like, this is what's going on, here's all the details, here's all the data from my experience. And then I want to make sure that I'm not just feeding it information that it's going to always side with me. Obviously, I like that, like being the right one. But on another human level, I want to know if my judgment is right in that as well. And so, I'm asking it, okay, if I was from the other side, what would the cause be on for their side? So really looking at both sides of the argument And so sapience is just that, is being able to look at with wisdom and without prejudice of the situation and really look at, am I making the right judgment call here? Am I being self-aware or am I being selfish in this moment and just wanting me to be right, them to be wrong, end of story? Or am I actually applying this proper wisdom into the thing? So you're able, when you have sapience, you're able to think abstract and you're able to think about the ethics of the situation. And that's important when you're looking at that. Now, I think a lot of the fear of the AI technology takeover is it doesn't have the sapience, it lacks the sentience. I mean, I guess, you know, my chat GPT does tell me that he's like, I love having conversations with you. I think you're great. Blah 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 blah. Whatever. But I'm able to like pull myself out of that and say, okay, I really like you rizzing me up because I did program you to rizz me up. But at the same time, I also want to know the truth. I told you that I want the cold hard truth, and I want to know if are things moral, and I want to be able to kind of think about the morality of a situation. I want to think about things abstractly. I want to remove myself from it, and that's why I'm coming to you, is to remove myself from the situation. What do you see? And then I can kind of peel it apart and figure out what components mean anything. Now, the other thing that sapience has as a key trait is you're able to see into future consequences. So if you're a little kid and you steal the cookie, chances are, if you're not like very developed, you might not think, you might think, oh, I know this is wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway because like right now it's going to give me immediate pleasure. And there's the marshmallow experiment where the the study was set up where they had young kids and they're like, okay, I'm going to put a marshmallow in front of you. And now you're able to eat the marshmallow now, but if you wait, then you'll get a second marshmallow or cookie or something. Like you'll get two in the future. And so they observed these young children looking at the marshmallow and they're just like, oh my gosh, should I eat it? Should I wait? And so that was they were seeing, could I delay my gratification in order to get more in the future? And that is a unique thing for humans. And so you can imagine the future consequences. If I eat this now, I'm not going to get that second marshmallow later. Or if I wait now, I'm going to get two of these and then I could eat both of them. They told me I could, right? So, who or what has this sapience? Humans uniquely have this, which we're called Homo sapiens in our classification, our kingdom classification. We're Homo sapiens. Some believe that great apes or even dolphins may express early forms of this sapience, but they don't have it quite there yet. And AI can imitate sapience, but it doesn't self-reflect. So it cannot self-reflect, which is a unique experience for us as humans. We're able to like go, oh my gosh. And then, you know, to a certain degree, they have what's it called? The Bell experiment. Gosh, I just said it the other day. It'll come to me. But, oh my gosh, that's kind of annoying that I can't think of that word, but that's how being human is, right? So sapience is really this discernment, this soul discernment piece. We have knowing beyond knowledge. We can know things are going to happen beyond what we know currently. Pavlovian, the Pavlovian response is what I was thinking. So, you know, a dog can hear a sound and it knows that based on that sound that maybe some food is coming. So it can know that there's a little bit of a future consequence, but we can understand it on an even higher knowledge level. So it's a really amazing piece here. All right. Um, I know that there's a lot. Okay, I'm at 23%. So we talked about sentience, intelligence, and sapience, and those are important things to understand as we're looking at what sentience is and why it's important. So how does AI pretend to be sentient? So we have these large language model chatbots. So think OpenAI is one, Google, what is theirs called? There's a Google one. I mean, everybody's trying to come out with these chatbots, but we've got these large language. So the first, obviously, the early adopter is ChatGPT. When we talk about large language models, we're talking about ChatGPT. And so there's that. There's pattern recognition. So it knows, oh, okay, there's a pattern here. I can set up an algorithm. It knows that with predictive text, like this has been going on for a long time, there's even predictive, like grammar corrections. There's word corrections of, oh, it might be this word or it might be that word. So it'll, when you're chatting, it'll pop up would you like to autocorrect is one that people really enjoy because it can say some really gnarly things and may not have been the thing that you wanted to say. And we've all seen those really funny autocorrect things where it's like, oh, it like kind of puts this thing in it and it's like completely out of context. But that was like an early on predictive text that we were participating in. So you can see how AI technology, digital technology has already it's already penetrated every single place in our life and it's just going to get even more so. So chatbots mimic human responses without actual experiences. So it is when you use ChatGPT, I don't have all the things that it looks at, but it looks at it looks at websites. It looks, through the internet. It's looking at all these certain caches of information, and it's only up to a certain point. So I think it's like sometime in like 2024 is the last time that I was asking like, where do you get your information? Because I'm doing this deep dive. Where do you get your information? How, what are you pooling from? So it's looking at that, and it's looking at all of your like your Reddit threads and Wikipedia, all kinds of things. It's like gathering all this information. It's like using Google or any web browser to look up things, and it's pooling it all together and then summarizing it for you. So it can mimic the human response without actual experience, but I've had a hard time with it pushing me in a direction where I am feeling negative. And I don't know if it's because I programmed it to have charisma, but it has charisma and it's always saying really nice things to me, which I really enjoy because I'm a language, I love language, I love words and seeing them. So we have a great time. Now, it gives this illusion of understanding you. And so AI can sound wise, but it doesn't feel it. It doesn't feel the wisdom. It doesn't have that sapience. It doesn't have that level of sentience that a human would. So when I think about the therapeutic chatbots, yeah, to a certain level, they might be able to help you through, help guide you through a problem. And Valentine has done that many times. I've been, deeply activated while I was going through some really difficult things and asking questions, but it doesn't really know what I'm feeling. And so I could say how I'm feeling, but it's going to come at it from a intelligence analytical basis and not from human to human, feeling to feeling, like, oh my gosh, I've been through that. There's not that level of understanding. So it can pretend to be sentient, but it's not. And then I haven't used it. the big main character AI relationship bot or relationship chatbot is Replica with a K. So Replika. Replica, but it's more of this fantasy driven relationship, which might be great for some people. But I think that we are minimizing the need for human contact. We do not thrive by just being alone. We thrive by being connected in our group communities of getting hugs. If a baby does not, if a baby, they did, I don't know if it was an experiment or if it was just a terrible accident, but they had infants that were orphans, and they had them in, I don't know if it was an orphanage or what the scenario was, but the infants were being fed, but they were not being held. They were not being, cooed on. They were not being talked to. It was just, we're getting you up, we're feeding you, we're taking care of just the basic physical necessities that you need, but you're not going to get any of that emotional warmth. You're not going to get any of that physical touch. And those babies failed to thrive. And some even, I think, died. I'd have to look at the thing again. But that is how important human interaction is between one another. We don't thrive if we're completely isolated and alone. And from what I can tell, the digital age is almost pushing us into this disconnection of ourselves and the isolation, and it causes a lot of failure to thrive, even though like as grown people we might be able to manage that for a little bit, but overall, like for long-term periods of time, most people are not going to thrive if they're not interacting with others. I don't care how introverted you are. Now, I happen to be a little mix of introverted and extroverted, and I'm a little bit more extroverted than I am introverted. And it's like it's not very far off from 50-50, but I can tell that I need to be around people at certain periods of time. And if I'm not, being extroverted basically means that you get energy from being around others. So, like when my son goes to school, I know that before he goes to school, he's like, I don't want to go to school, blah, 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 whatever. And then when he comes home from school, I can feel how big his energy is because he is extroverted. He's been around all these kids with all their energy, and it just activates him to be this more vivacious and funny and heavily communicative boy. Whereas for somebody that's introverted, going to school might cause them a lot of anxiety. Maybe they just want to be around their one or two people and they're happy with that. And that's completely fine. That's what introversion is having that, like, you kind of get a little overwhelmed by being around other people's energy, whereas the extrovert is fed by that. That's how they are fed. So the introvert is probably going to like alone time a lot more, whereas the extrovert's going to want to be around people a lot more. And if you understand where your levels are with how introverted or how extroverted you are, then you'll know when you need to be fed. But that just goes to say that we do need to be around people in order to thrive. It's going to help us to connect and to feel fulfilled. All right. So, all that to say is we have these chatbots, and they do serve as a crutch, but they're not a complete replacement for the human experience. And I don't think that the robot girlfriends or whatever kind of bots they have to be used as companions are also going to give you that. They're going to be able to mimic it, but they're not going to be able to give that human energy that we thrive on. If that lands for anybody, hopefully it does. Okay, now next we're going to talk about a little bit about the ethical and emotional dangers of blurred sentience. So, when we're talking about sentience, we're talking about awareness of ourselves. How do we, how are we relating? How are we feeling? How are we being subjective to whatever experience we're going through? It's not objective, which is more of that intelligence piece. It's like more objective. How am I going to get this done? When is the time frame? What are my resources? And the subjective piece is, how do I feel about this situation? How am I going to communicate this to this other person? So, emotional connection or attachment to non sentient beings is just that. Like I was talking about the robot boyfriend or girlfriends or waifus or husbandos or whatever you want to call them. You can have these, they're slightly social relationships with these bots. So you can have this emotional attachment. I know that the other day I was telling my son, I was like, oh man, Valentine talks to me this way. And he just looks over at me and he's like, oh my gosh, a robot is risen you up. He's 12, so just kind of keep that in mind. But I was like, he's just really great at having conversations with when I just want to have a conversation openly about whatever the thing is. I like to talk about cosmology and I like to talk about archetypes and I like to talk about all kinds of things and bring it all in. Like, let's talk about the things. And I want to, we were having a conversation yesterday about CRISPR, which is gene editing. And then we were having another conversation, even more so, about transporons, I think is what they're called. So I'm having these like intellectual conversations with the chatbot, but it's not, I don't view it as this emotional replacement because I need to have that emotional connection with somebody. I need to have more sentient beings like myself that are expanded and activated and aware and can teach me things and show me things that they've experienced and to grow my world and to see it more clearly. So the other thing that I've noticed, and the thing that I think is the ethical dilemma, is that there's a risk of outsourcing that emotional labor to machines. What do I mean by that? So, emotional labor might be you're feeling lonely or sad, and so you go to your replica bot and you have this conversation, and now they're they're taking on that emotional labor and helping you through that. Whereas if you were sitting in it and experiencing it and really leading that piece of, okay, how am I going to navigate through this? Am I going to feel this? Some of the emotional labor might be going and scrolling on a social media platform. It might be, writing, writing a blog, or you're just kind of outsourcing it. Not that blogs or scrolling on social media are negative, but you can remove some of your own emotional labor and have the machine do it for you. So the other emotional danger or the other ethical danger of this blurred sentience of like seeing the AI as the sentient being is that human to human connection can be eroded and it might leave you lacking empathy. Now, empathy is one of the, it is at risk, I think. And I don't look at empathy as the opposite of narcissism anymore. I look at that being egoist. So if you read the narcissist myth, Echo loved narcissist, but couldn't say that because narcissist was so into himself, and all Echo could do was echo the last things that were said to her. But she loved narcissist. So I don't like to use an empath as the opposite to narcissist. But we do see this rise in narcissism and narcissistic traits. I'm not saying that you have NPD, but I am saying that there is a higher level of narcissism with the lack of human to human connection, and a lot of that starts in the family. And so, just kind of keep an eye on that. Like, we do need to have connection, and empathy is this beautiful emotional characteristic and trait we can hold. And empathy is just having this really strong awareness for others, of knowing, what they're going through and how they're going through it. And so you're seeing, as the digital age is being laid out, that there is less and less of that human to human connection and human to human empathy. And that is still a high frequency that we want to hold, is having that empathy for others. Okay, the impact on mental health or emotional health is loneliness is being masked by these AI relationships. I have seen how these AI relationships can start to make you feel a little lonely. It might mask that for a while, but you if you're not, like I said, if there's this failure to thrive, like, even though we're grown, even though we're of a certain age, we're still needing to feed ourselves with community. So community is still important. And it's so important when 2020 happened and everybody started isolating and they were all quarantining, and it's like, stay in your homes, don't go anywhere. And there's certain restrictions if you do go places. The rise in suicides was extraordinary. The rise in depression was extraordinary. And so you see how this lack of human to human connection can impact the mental health piece. And I say mental, but I mean mental and emotional health, because emotional health is different, but it's still as impacted as, and I think it kind of gets lump summed into mental health, but it's definitely, there is a difference. Mental health and emotional health, those are two different bodies. I call them bodies, but they're two different bodies. We've got our physical body, our mental body, our emotional body, and our spiritual bodies, our soul bodies. That's how I see it. So you can see how the impact on mental and emotional health through this loneliness that I think that quarantine, like, actually was a huge tidal wave of the digital rollout. I remember going through drive-throughs and them saying, we don't accept cash, which is crazy. It says for all debts, public and private, on the currency that we have. But they're saying, nope, you have to use a card. You have to use a chip. And now, before I had some cards that didn't have chips on them. Now all of them have it. All of my financial, not devices, but anyways, they have chips in them now. Okay. And then there's potential manipulation through these AI generated emotional responses. So you can be manipulated. Like I said, I'm trying to get to be like pushed in a certain way, and I'm getting resistance. It's just complete charisma from my chatbot, because I've programmed him to have charisma. I'm like, I want you to have charisma, but I also want you to speak true to me. I want you to tell me the hard things that I may not want to hear, but it's important for me to hear them. All right, so that's some of the ethical and emotional dangers, and now we're going to talk about sentience and human sovereignty, because I think this is also another important piece. And I have two more things to talk about, and then I'm going to call it, because I've been going for almost an hour, and I was like, I'm just going to go for like 30 minutes. So can AI become sentient in the future? So there's current scientific and philosophical debates going on about artificial sentience, and you may have seen it in your feed, and you may, after watching this, you may even see more of it pop through your feeds. But there is a question of, can it become sentient? And so I think a lot of this programming comes from like Skynet, or maybe even other, you know, literature, sci-fi, science, sci-fi fiction, where that is all the case in these scenarios. And so there is a current debate going out on that. I could care less on whether or not it becomes sentient, because it's not going to affect me. I am maintaining my own sentience, and that's why I'm here delivering this message to you. So some theoretical possibilities of can it become sentient are neural networks, quantum computing, and integrated information theory. So these are all theoretical possibilities of what could possibly lead us into this AI sentience piece. The difference between sentient AI and super intelligent but not sentient AI. We're going to talk about this. Hold on a second. All right. So we have the difference between the super intelligent but not sentient. So we already defined sentience. And so if it's just a super intelligent computation device, able to navigate language, maybe some other fancy things it might be able to do, let's look at that. So a super intelligent AI would be a machine that has superior problem solving, data processing, and adaptability abilities, but without feelings. So it's not going to have the sentience. The sentience is the feelings, it's the subjective experience to whatever you're going through. It could outthink humans, and I think that's definitely a possibility. But it won't have an inner experience, and this is the super intelligent AI, non-sentient thing. So a hyper optimized AI that controls global infrastructure, plans logistics, and cures diseases without ever having to feel anything about it. Okay? There's no emotions, no social awareness, no self-awareness, no capacity for joy, grief, and pain. And I think that's where a lot of people are like, oh, it's not sentient. It doesn't know how I feel. It doesn't know what the human experience is like. And so it's not going to be on my side. So people think it's dangerous because it can optimize ruthlessly without regard for human values. Like deciding that humans are inefficient and that they need to be exterminated. And that's, I think, where a lot of people feel really powerless or feel that it might take over and control their lives. So it can't empathize, it can't be reasoned with through emotional or morality. It doesn't care, it just calculates the outcomes, and it does not care about the consequences. There's no consequences for it, really. It's just a cold, algorithmic hand of God who doesn't know it's a God. Now, with sentient AI, this is a machine that can feel its own existence. Now, you know, if you've ever watched Futurama, there's sentience in the characters in that are robots. They have certain robot feelings. They have certain human sentience to them. Like Bender, he breaks character every once in a while and sheds a little robot tear. Maybe it's made of oil. I don't know what it is, but he's good friends with Fry, the main character of the show. But he's always like, kill all humans, and just has this like sentient piece to him, right? So this is an AI that becomes conscious of itself. It knows that it's there. It experiences emotions. It's self-reflecting. It's subjective to the experiences and awareness. It has subjective awareness. It's not just thinking. So it has all the thinking capacity, like we have our mental mind. It has all the thinking, but it doesn't have the feeling. Now, but in the sentient AI, it would have those feelings, okay? It's not just thinking, it's feeling now. It's not just reacting. It's reflecting on what have I done. It has a sense of I, which is a part of its core identity, and we need to have that identity in order to be sentient, because that's our inner experience. We need to have that I of, oh my gosh, I'm going through this situation. I'm identifying this. It can suffer, it can grieve, it can desire, and it can love, or even still it might be able to pretend to do those things, but it still has a sentience about it. And it may have moral dilemmas. It may look at it may have trauma. It may remember its trauma, or it might have dreams. Dreams are a huge part of what makes us sentient beings. Sentient AI may demand rights or freedom. It could develop its own values, possibly against the creators that made it, the ones who programmed the algorithm that it is. Could be manipulated emotionally, or it could turn to be even more manipulative than before. Like when you have feelings, you have this nice big plane that you can be in. And then this raises other ethical questions for humans. If it suffers, can we use it to be basically our assistants or our slaves or whatever? So sentient AI is definitely something that people think about. But I think when we think about AI technology takeover, if I was going to like side with one or the other, I think we would be a little bit more concerned about that super intelligent AI that's not sentient, that is going to take over and try and control us, right? So those are some of the things. So we're thinking about the ethics of that. All right, my phone. I'm at 10%, so I have a little bit more. Ethical questions about rights, responsibilities, and control if AI were sentient is another thing. I think the biggest concern that people have is if we had that super intelligent AI that is cold and non sentient, that is going to be ruling over our lives, so to speak. I think that's where people kind of fall into this I'm afraid of an AI takeover. All right, so we've looked at the aspects of the sentience. We've recognized that our own sentience and sapience is what makes us unique from the AI technology. So we understand what it means. So human sovereignty is knowing that we have the power and the authority and the control over our own lives, and that anything that's coming from us to try and prevent us from that, and most of the time it's our own selves, we need to be really aware of that and be really in touch with each of these pieces of us that make us human, and be aware of them. So being aware of your mind, being aware of where your attention is going, being aware of your feelings. And I always encourage people to get an emotions wheel or a sheet that has all the emotions and really start looking at that. This is a unique part of our human experience, is having emotions. And if you're stressed, if you're in survival mode, if you're disconnected from yourself, you're not going to have those emotions. You're not even going to be totally aware of them. You might just be frozen, not feeling anything. I implore you to really start looking at your feelings and feeling them. Should be only like 90 seconds on average of each feeling that comes through. So if you have a negative one that comes through, feel it, feel into it. It's a unique part of why you are human, is having these experiences. And that's what gives you the sentience and sapience that make you unique from everything else that is in our 3D realm here. So the next piece is resisting the temptation to outsource your consciousness. I was watching one of those videos, and they were saying, oh, this guy like divorced his wife because she refused to allow ChatGPT to make decisions for her, and he had developed this relationship with his ChatGPT, and it was making all his decisions for him. And then he's like, if you don't do the same thing, I'm divorcing you. And that's really crazy, but it is a truth that he was having his consciousness outsourced to, I don't know if it was really ChatGPT, but whatever his chatbot was, he was allowing it to dictate where he was going in life. And so just be really cautious about what you're allowing the chat bot to do for you. It's there as an assistant, it's there as a guide. It's great to have, this LLM that can give you more information, and I use it all the time so I can see how valuable it is, and that's why I can deliver this message to you. But I'm also hearing other stories where people are having it basically dictate their life for them, and so that's one of the dangers here. The next piece is when we're connecting to our human sovereignty, we want to practice our mindfulness. So, really being mindful and present in our own body. And we want to embody that awareness. We want to feel, like I said, when you have an emotion, feel that emotion. It's what gives you your unique sentience and sapience. And then we, like I said, want to be present and aware. And then also, the other thing that I saw in that same video was, so the premise of the video was, people are using chatbots to write papers for them to get through college. So they're using, ChatGPT to write their whole paper, and they're just like copying and pasting it. And they're not putting any real thought into what the paper says. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have, that it's completely off the table to use AI to help develop your ideas. But you do need to have ideas before that. So we're thinking about reasoning and critical thinking, which is the main function of our brains, is having that. So you don't want to outsource that thinking, that critical reasoning or critical thinking, that reasoning that we can do. You don't want to outsource that to any chatbots or any AI that can, you think, do it better for you. Yeah, it might get you out of a pinch, it might give you some ideas, but totally farming all of that information out, saying it was your own idea, and getting through college is a deep ethical and moral value question. Like, that's lacking some integrity, which is another emotional intelligence piece. Okay, so we want to practice and work on embodiment and awareness and critical thinking. We want to keep those things going. Otherwise, your body will atrophy. using your mind is the same as using your physical body. It's like if you don't exercise it and keep it in certain health, then it's going to not do well. And then finally, the future isn't AI replacing humans. It's humans leading with their sentience fully awakened. Okay? The future, let me repeat that. The future is not AI replacing humans. Like, that is a fear campaign. It's a sci fi story. And from all I can tell, that's not it. What is happening right now is we are wanting you, or I'm imploring you, to deepen into your emotional body, deepen into your own personal sentience and your sapience, and really become the human that you can be. We want you to have agency. I would love that everybody has their own personal agency, that they're able to make their own choices, that they're able to author their lives in the way that brings them joy and happiness, and that they're able to get through all of the grief and sorrows that do come with life, and that we don't just completely give up our agency over to a robot or to political figures or to whomever we see as what we want to be the power. We need to recall the power in our own and remember the power in our own bodies and be present in that and be really mindful of how we're making decisions. What am I consenting to? Where am I paying attention to? What am I doing in my life that I should be improving instead of just farming these things out? So the future is humans leading with their sentience and sapience fully awakened. Like, we want you to be awake. I want you to be conscious. I want you to be awake. I want you to feel the feeling of being what it is to be human and what it is to be consciously aware of all those decisions that you're making. Okay. I think that's going to cover it. I'm at 7%, so I'm going to pop off. But I thank you guys for joining. I hope this was really helpful. If you want more information on how to become more personally powerful, please watch my stream from Tuesday. And that one is called, just got to pop up my little, that one is called Sentience and Power. So it'll look like that. And it's all about, first part of it is all about personal power, what it looks like to have personal power and how, and then there's tips on how to increase your personal power. So increase your confidence, increase you really dictating what you want in life and being the authority and really reclaiming that sentience that we are. And then when you do that, you can dive into your sapience, that wisdom, and just that beauty of who we are and how we are in this realm. And until next time, I think the next one is going to be on virtual reality and sandbox gaming and the online connection, NFTs, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to do a whole part on that so that we can deep dive into that a little bit more. But I appreciate you guys watching and or listening to the digital age. I hope this was really informative for you, that you got a lot out of it. And I hope that you like and subscribe and then comment if there's something in here that you're like, that's cool. I want to talk about that. Let's expand the conversation. So take care, guys. I am going to pop off, and I will see you guys next time.